Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another reading of 1001 Nights. My name is Saman Giraud and I'll be your host this evening. I hope that wherever you are safe and sound, above all healthy. And we are going to continue with the 138th night. All right, enjoy the reading. Now when it was the 138th night, she said, "It hath reached me, auspicious king, that when Nuzhat al-Zaman related to her husband the sad case of the widow of her brother, Zau al-Makan, the chamberlain said, 'Entreat her honourably and enrich her poverty.' Thus far concerning Nuzhat al-Zaman and her consort and the... Apologies. Let me just pick it up from the last sentence. One of my friends in the UK, who's never tuned in, by the way, before, just called. Entreat her honourably and enrich her poverty. Thus far concerning Nuzhat al-Zaman and her consort and the relict of Zau al-Makan. But as regards Kanmakan and his cousin Kuzia-Fakan, they grew up and flourished till they waxed like unto two fruit-laden boughs or two shining moons. And they reached the age of 15. And she was indeed the fairest of maids who were modestly veiled, lovely faced, with smooth cheeks graced, and slender waist on heavy hips based. And her shape was the shaft's thin line, and her lips were sweeter than old wine. And the nectar of her mouth, as it were the fountain Salsabil, even as saith the poet in these two couplets describing one like her. As though tisane of wine on her lips honey dew dropped from the ripened grapes, her mouth in clusters grew. And when her frame thou doublest and low bends her vine, praise her creature's might, no creature ever knew. Of a truth Allah had united in her every charm. Her shape would shame the branch of waving tree, and the rose before her cheeks craved lenity. And the honeydew of her lips of wine made jeer, however old and clear. And she gladdened heart and beholder with joyous cheer, even as saith of her the poet. Goodly of gifts is she, and charmed those perfect eyes, with lashes shaming cold, and all the fair ones called. And from those eyne the glances pierced the lover's heart, like sword in Mir al-Muminina, Ali's hold. And the relator continueth, as for Kanmakan, he became unique in loveliness, and excelling in perfection no less. None could even him in qualities as in seemliness, and the sheen of valour between his eyes was a spy, testifying for him, while against him it never testified. The hardest hearts inclined to his side, his eyelids bore lashes black as by coal, and he was of surpassing worth in body and soul. And when the down of lips and cheeks began to sprout, bards and poets sang for him far and near. Appeared not my excuse till hair had clothed his cheek, and gloom overcrept that side face, sight to stagger. A fawn when eyes would batten on his charms, each glance deals thrust like point of khanjar dagger. And saith another poet, his lover's souls have drawn upon his cheek an aunt that perfected his rosy light. I marvel at such matters Laza penned, who yet with greeny robes of heaven are dyed. Now it chanced one holiday that Kuzia-Fakan fared forth to make festival with certain kindred of the court, and she went, surrounded by her handmaids. And indeed beauty encompassed her, the roses of her cheeks dealt envy to their mould. From out her smiling lips leaven flashed white, gleaming like the chamomile. And Kanmakan began to turn about her and devour her with his sight, for she was the moon of resplendent light. Then he took heart and, giving his tongue a start, began to improvise. When shall the disappointed heart be healed of severance, and lips of union smile at seizing of our hard mischance? Would heaven I knew shall come some night, and with it surely bring meeting with friend who like myself endureth sufferance. When Kuzia Fakan heard these couplets, she showed vexation and disapproval, and putting on a haughty and angry air, said to him, Dost thou name me in thy verse to shame me amongst folk? By Allah, if thou turn not from this talk, I will assuredly complain of thee to the Grand Chamberlain, Sultan of Khorasan and Baghdad, and Lord of Justice and Equity, that disgrace and punishment may befall thee. Kanmakan made no reply for anger, but he returned to Baghdad, and Kuzia Fakan also returned to her palace and complained of her cousin to her mother, who said to her, O my daughter, haply he meant thee no harm, and is he aught but an orphan? Withal he said naught of reproach to thee, so beware thou tell none of this, lest perchance it come to the Sultan's ears, and he cut short his life, and blot out his name, and make it even as yesterday, whose memory hath passed away. However, Kanmakan's love for Kuzia Fakan spread abroad in Baghdad, so that the women talked of it. Moreover, his breast became straitened, and his patience waned, and he knew not what to do. Yet he could not hide his condition from the world. Then longed he to give vent to the pangs he endured by reason of the low of separation. But he feared her rebuke and her wrath, so he began improvising. Now is my dread to incur reproaches which disturb her temper and her mind obscure. Patient I'll bear them, even as generous youth beareth the burn of brand, his case to cure. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now when it was the 139th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the Grand Chamberlain became Sultan, they named him King Sasan, and after he had assumed the throne, he governed the people in righteous way. Now as he was giving audience one day, Kanmakan's verses came to his knowledge. Thereupon he repented him of the past, and going in to his wife Nuzhat al-Zaman, said to her, Verily, to join halfa grass and fire is the greatest of risks, and man may not be trusted with women so long as eye glanceth and eyelid quivereth. Now thy brother's son Kanmakan is come to man's estate, and it behoveth us to forbid him access to the rooms where anklets trinkle. And it is yet more needful to forbid thy daughter the company of man, for the like of her should be kept in the harem. Replied she, Thou sayest sooth, O wise king. Next day came Kanmakan according to his wont, and going in to his aunt saluted her. She returned his salutation and said to him, O my son, I have somewhat to say to thee, which I would fain leave unsaid, yet I must tell it thee despite my inclination. Quoth he, Speak. And quoth she, Know then that thy sire, the chamberlain, the father of Kuzia Fakan, hath heard of the verses thou madest anent her, and hath ordered that she be kept in the harem and out of thy reach. If therefore, O my son, thou want anything from us, I will send it to thee from behind the door, and thou shalt not look upon Kuzia Fakan, nor shalt thou return hither from this day forth. When he heard this, he arose and withdrew without speaking a single word, and betaking himself to his mother, related what his aunt had said. She observed, This all cometh of thine over-talking. Thou knowest that the news of thy passion for Kuzia Fakan is noised abroad, and the tattle hath spread everywhere how thou eatest their food, and thereafter thou courtest their daughter. Rejoined he, And who should have her but I? She is the daughter of my father's brother, and I have the best of rights to her. Retorted his mother, these are idle words. Be silent, lest haply thy talk came to King Sasan's ears, and it proved the cause of thy losing her, and the reason of thy ruin, and increase of thine affliction. They have not sent us any supper tonight, and we shall die an hungered. And were we in any land but this, we were already dead of famine or of shame for begging our bread. When Kanmakan heard these words from his mother, his regrets redoubled. His eyes ran over with tears, and he complained and began improvising. Minish this blame I ever bear from you. My heart loves her to whom all love is due. Ask not from me of patience jot or tittle. Divorce of patience by God's house I rue. What blamers preach of patience I unheed. Here am I, love path firmly to pursue. Indeed they bar me access to my love. Here am I, by God's wrath, no ill I sue. Good soothe my bones, whenas they hear thy name. Quail as birds quail, when Nissus over them flew. Ah, say to them who blame my love, that I will love that face for cousin, till I die. And when he had ended his verses, he said to his mother, I have no longer a place in my aunt's house, nor among these people, but I will go forth from the palace and abide in the corners of the city. So he and his mother left the court, and having sought an abode in the neighbourhood of the poorer sort, there settled. But she used to go from time to time to King Sasan's palace, and thence take daily bread for herself and her son. As this went on, Kuzia Fakan took her aside one day and said to her, Alas, O mine auntie, how is it with thy son? Replied she, O my daughter, sooth to say, he is tearful-eyed and heavy-hearted, being fallen into the net of thy love. And she repeated to her the couplets he had made, whereupon Kuzia Fakan wept and said, By Allah, I rebuked him not for his words, nor for ill will to him, but because I feared for him the malice of foes. Indeed, my passion for him is double that he feeleth for me. My tongue may not describe my yearning for him, and were it not for the extravagant wilfulness of his words and the wanderings of his wits, my father had not cut off from him favours that besit, nor had decreed unto him exclusion and prohibition as fit. However, man's days bring naught but change, and patience in all case is most becoming. Peradventure, he who ordained our severance will vouchsafe our reunion. And she began versifying in these two couplets. O son of mine uncle, same sorrow I bear, and suffer the like of thy cark and thy care. Yet hide I from man what I suffer for pine. Hide it too, and such secret to man never bear. When his mother heard this from her, she thanked her and blessed her. Then she left her and acquainted her son with what she had said. Whereupon his desire for her increased, and he took heart, being eased of his despair and the turmoil of his love and care. And he said, By Allah, I desire none but her. And he began improvising. Leave this blame. I will list to no flout of my foe. I divulged a secret was told me to keep. He is lost to my side, for whose union I yearn, and I watch all the while he can slumber and sleep. So the days and nights went by, whilst Kanmakan lay tossing upon coals of fire, till he reached the age of 17, and his beauty had waxed perfect, and his wits were at their brightest. One night, as he lay awake, he communed with himself and said, Why should I keep silence till I waste away and see not my lover? Fault have I none save poverty, so by Allah I am resolved to remove me from this region and wander over the wild and the wold. For my position in this city is a torture, and I have no friend nor lover therein to comfort me. wherefore I am determined to distract myself by absence from my native land, till I die and take my rest after this shame and tribulation. And he began to improvise and recited these couplets. Albeit my vitals quiver neath this ban, before the foe myself I'll never unman. So pardon me, my vitals are of grit, whose superscriptions are my tears that ran. Hey ho, my cousin seemeth hoary May, come down to earth by reason of Rizwan. Scapes not the dreadful sword lunge of her look, who dares the glancing of those eyne to scan. Over Allah's widespread world I'll roam, and from such exile win what bread I can. Yes, over broad earth I'll roam and save my soul, all but her absence bearing like a man. With gladsome heart I'll haunt the field of fight, and meet the bravest brave in battle van. So Kanmakan fared forth from the palace barefoot, and he walked in a short slate gown, wearing on his head a skull cap of felt, 7 years old, and carrying a scone 3 days stale, and in the deep glooms of night betook himself to the portal Al-Arij of Baghdad. Here he waited for the gate to be opened, and when it was opened, he was the first to pass through it. And he went out at random and wandered about the wastes night and day. When the dark hours came, his mother sought him but found him not, whereupon the world waxed straight upon her for all that it was great and wide, and she took no delight in aught of weal it supplied. She looked for him a first day, and a second day, and a third day, till 10 days were past, but no news of him reached her. Then her breast became contracted, and she shrieked and shrilled, saying, O my son, O my darling, thou hast revived my regrets. Sufficed not what I endured, but thou must depart from my home. After thee I care not for food nor joy and sleep, and naught but tears and mourning are left me. O my son, from what land shall I call thee? And what town hath given thee refuge? Then her sobs burst out, and she began repeating these couplets. Well learned we, since ye left, our grief and sorrow to sustain, while bows of severance shot their shafts in many a railing rain. They left me, after girthing on their cells of corduroy, to fight the very pangs of death, while spanned they sandy plain. Mysterious through the nightly gloom there came the moan of dove, a ring-dove, and replied I, Seest thy plaint, how durst complain? If by my life her heart like mine were full of pain and pine, she had not decked her neck with ring, nor soul with ruddy stain. Fled is mine own familiar friend, bequeathing me a store of parting pang and absence ache to suffer evermore. Then she abstained from food and drink, and gave herself up to excessive tear-shedding and lamentation. Her grief became public property far and wide, and all the people of the town and countryside wept with her and cried, Where is thine Ain, O Zaw al-Makan? And they bewailed the rigours of time, saying, Would heaven we knew what hath befallen Kanmakan, that he fled his native town, and chased himself from the place where his father used to fill all in hungry case, and do justice and grace. And his mother redoubled her weeping and wailing, till the news of Kanmakan's departure came to King Sasan. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day, and ceased saying her permitted say. That was it for tonight. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Thank you very much for tuning in. I think we're off tomorrow if tomorrow is Saturday. Tuesday Joanna is going to pick up, so please tune in again. Thank you for your time and your love and kindness. And as usual, please remember to go inwards instead of outwards. Wishing you all a peaceful night, day, evening, wherever you are in this world. Much love.